extent do humans harm social environments? Humans cause social tension with the use of prejudice in physical and technological communities. Although different forms of hate speech has decreased over the years, it's still a very critical and crucial problem. Dr. Martin Luther King was a minister and prominent figure during the Civil Rights Movement. In his letter from Birmingham jail, he wrote this: "When you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park, and see tears welling up in her eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children." He wrote his frustrations in this letter because he was very upset with the way segregation was affecting how his daughters were perceiving the world and children all over America. Although these forms of segregation and hate speech has decreased over the years, it is still a prominent problem because although hate speech is morally wrong, it is still right in legal terms because, one, hate speech can be considered anything that anybody disagrees with, and hate speech is still allowed because of our First Amendment rights, which states that we have the freedom of speech, assembly, press, and religion. But because there is more education for younger generations about racism, it is on the slow decline. A judge in Virginia ordered 5 teenagers that were charged with racial vandalism on school property to read 12 novels about some of the darkest times in America's history, including slavery, segregation, the Holocaust, and write essays about all of them. Some of the titles include My Name is Asher Lev and Khalid Hosseinius. After the students read the novels and did their assignments, they never committed any kind of crime relating to that, and they genuinely felt that they were more educated and apologized for their actions. While social media gives people the ability to have access to information immediately and lets people connect with others around the world, it is also a host for misinformation and hate to spread. Edward Kessler, who is the founder of Wolf Institute and whose focuses mainly practice on interfaith religion, wrote in his article, Social Media and the Movement of Ideas, unfortunately, democratization of information and the increase in user-generated content also makes it easier for misinformation and negative content to proliferate online. Essentially, what he was saying was that as there is social media and it does have many positive effects, it ultimately has lots of negative effects because anybody can post anything, which means that what they can post can be extremely biased or downright false, or can be rooted in hate. Social media lets people inform others about their life and can lead to judgment and jealousy. Alice G. Walton, who has a PhD in neuroscience.
For the interruption, students, this is the last day to buy after prom. They will be at lunch in the Commons and also after school. Again, it's the last day to buy after prom tickets.
How social media lets people compare themselves to others, which makes them feel bad about themselves, but also lets them reflect hate onto others. And because you can post anything anonymously online, you can post anything you want without any type of punishment at all. And because of our First Amendment rights, much like hate speech, you can't necessarily punish these people because it is just them practicing their freedom of speech. But social media is changing for the better. One example is of an Instagram account under the name of the World Record Egg. This Instagram account posted this very simple picture of an egg and challenged its followers to get it to have the most likes on the entire platform. What started out as a joke and a meme turned into an internet revolution, and the picture of an egg got around 50 million likes in a matter of a couple of weeks, which broke the world record of most amount of likes. Most people thought it was just a joke to play around with, but eventually the egg revealed its identity of it cracking under pressure. And the message of the egg was to show people that you don't need to suffer in silence with mental illness, and it is good to talk about it, and seek help. Some possible solutions that could help our social climate was the one, provide education on racism and hate to younger children so that they can be more aware of the world around them and not fall into the same patterns of previous generations. Much like the students in Virginia, more law officials are using education instead of this as a form of discipline to help people. And if we start this education in earlier school years, we could prevent this spread of hate. And we could also use social media to make people more educated, but also use it as a positive and encouraging platform so more people can feel comfortable expressing their opinions without having hate towards them.
Okay, so a couple questions for you. First one is, how did you select the strategies you used to gather information or conduct research, and were they effective?
The strategies that I used to conduct my research was RAVEN, and the acronym for RAVEN stands for relevance and validity and things of such. While my sources came from the stimulus source, which was already reviewed and known for credibility, I also had to look for different sources myself and deem their credibility. Much like the article 6 Ways Social Media Affects Our Mental Health, the author has a PhD in neuroscience, and her career is mostly focused on how social media affects people's mental state. So she already has a vested interest into the topic, and she's well educated about it.
Good. And then overall, do you feel like they were effective?
Yeah, they were very effective.
Okay. Second question is, what additional questions emerged from your research, and why are these questions important?
Some additional questions I think emerged from my research is that I found was different forms that we can combat forms of hate speech. I found that in Germany, because that's where the Holocaust was the hotspot of, they actually banned the use of the Nazi flag in any anti-Semitic protests or protesting Hitler. And what I thought was that would be a great idea. Why doesn't America use that for neo-Nazism or just the fact of slavery? But I also had to think about this is our First Amendment rights, and Germany's rights are a little bit different.
Okay.